Hi, and welcome to the first in a series of audit webinars focusing on theft, loss, and operational issues that may be happening in your stores and what you can do to prevent it. Just to let you know, there will be some time at the end of this webinar for questions, or if you think of questions afterwards, or if you're watching this recorded, you can always send an email to info@envision.com. First, a little bit about me. So my name is Jennifer Suiza. I've been working for Envision for over 5 years. I'm currently the Audit System Services Manager. And before I worked for Envision, I worked for the Department of Homeland Security and in law enforcement. So my passion has always been about finding theft and finding ways of preventing theft from happening. So this webinar is just going to be an overview of how you can stop and, more importantly, prevent theft in your restaurants. The very first thing I'm going to talk about is theft in the dollars. Then I want to talk about what happens to stores with high theft and low morale. I also want to touch base on the broken window theory and how that relates to your restaurants. And then I want to talk about motivation, means, and opportunities that employees have to commit theft. And then we're going to touch base on how to catch it, stop it, and again, most importantly, how to prevent it. So this is a video of an employee that we've caught, and she has hid some money underneath the drawer. And so she's going to try to real sneaky go ahead and take it out of that drawer. And I don't know if you saw the shadow on the top, there was an employee nearby, so that's why she is kind of turning her back that way. She didn't get it the first time, she's going to try a second time. She knows it's in there somewhere. Just gotta find that, try that again. Nope. And third time's a charm. She's got the money out and she's going to go ahead and put that in her pocket. The sad truth is, if you own a business with employees, one or more of your employees is probably stealing from you, like our sneaky thief in this video. In fact, theft is not isolated to just a few bad employees. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, 75% of employees steal from the workplace at least once, and more than half of them will steal repeatedly. And without a system like Envision, the average time fraud happens before it is detected is 2 years. According to the National Restaurant Association, internal employee theft is responsible for an estimated 75% of inventory shortages, and that equates to about 7% of restaurant sales. An estimated 33% of all business bankruptcies are caused by employee theft. And annually, the cost of theft in the restaurant business is between $3 to $6 billion, and that contributes to about 50% of small business failures within the first year alone. So those dollars really do add up. So you think about your average refund. For most brands, that's about $20. To get to $100, that's just 5 falsified refunds per week, or a combination of voids, refunds, or any other ways they can manipulate the POS system. It's actually incredibly easy for them to take $100 out of the POS and still stay underneath the radar. So let's talk about that. How much do you need to make up those dollars that were stolen? If the store has a net profit of 4% and that same store incurred a loss of $100 on the register, then what is the amount of sales needed to offset that loss? The $100 loss would translate into needing an additional $2,500 in sales. As you can see in that chart here, even $25 loss would need an additional $625 in sales to overcome that loss. And as you can see, as the numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger, the more that they steal. The real dollar cost of a thief is way more than just the dollars that are taken from the register. Not only have they probably been stealing for several months or even years, according to statistics, the cost to make up that dollar amount really adds up when you look at what it takes to get that loss back. So although those numbers are shocking, the truth is that theft is costing you way more than just the dollars taken. So theft reduces morale at a store and increases employee churn. According to the National Restaurant Association, turnover remains one of the top ways restaurants are losing money year over year. And low morale actually leads to poor customer service. And you all know that if you improve guest experience, you increase your revenue over time. Decreased guest experience, on the other hand, will decrease your revenue over time. Low morale also leads to employees who don't care about the cleanliness or the profitability of the store, as you can see from my two examples on this slide. In fact, low morale has been shown to be the #1 reason why people steal from their employers. And the sad fact is that thieves actually generate more thieves. In this picture here, you can see that money has been laying out, safes are open, office doors are open, and they're just sitting there for anybody to take. As a matter of fact, in both of these examples, this remained this way for over an hour, and the store was open and employees were walking around in the back. So I want to touch base a little bit on the broken window theory. So the broken window theory was defined in 1982 by social scientists James Wilson and George Killing. It states that no matter how rich or poor a neighborhood, one broken and unrepaired window would soon lead to many more broken windows. That broken, unrepaired window was a signal that nobody cared, and so breaking more windows was completely acceptable. Eventually, the entire neighborhood adapts to the same feelings. They found crime increased, home values decreased, and morale plummeted. But the good news is that once you begin to deal with the small problems in the neighborhood, they began to empower those neighborhoods, and they saw a turnaround. This also applies to your restaurants. If you allow theft to fester, your restaurants will eventually be like those neighborhoods with the broken windows. So to really get a handle on theft in your store, you need to understand the motivation of why people steal, the means they use to steal, and the opportunities that they have to steal. First one is motivation. As we talked about earlier, studies have shown that most employees steal not only for financial reasons, but for more personal reasons, low morale being the biggest. If an employee is unhappy at their job and feels they are being treated unfairly, that may motivate them to steal. If they are being mistreated by managers or coworkers, or if they feel they are underpaid and overworked. They also may feel like everybody else is doing it, so therefore they're justified to steal, especially if it's a manager or district manager or somebody above them stealing. The next is means and opportunity. So means are, how are your employees stealing from you? What tools are they using to commit the theft? We find that they use most often manager keys and key cards. So manager keys, like the ones dangling out of the drawer here, they go and they get them, and now they can open up the drawer whenever they want. They don't even have to ring in a transaction if they don't want. They have the ability now to open up the drawer. We also find them in POS functions like no sells, voids after total, reopens, refunds, especially with no customer present, small dollar transactions, and discounts. But what about the opportunities? So when are they stealing from you? We have found in the loss prevention departments that they steal most often when they are alone in the office, counting out those drawers or the deposits. They are alone in the drive-through or the front counter with nobody nearby them. Again, with those refunds with no customer present. And managers who don't manage. That is managers who spend the majority of their time in the office, especially during the lunch or the dinner rush or late night. That gives a lot of opportunities for the employees on the floor to steal. So theft does not have to be the cost of doing business. Using the tools given, you can actually catch it, you can stop it, and you can prevent it from happening. With prevention, of course, like I said before, being that ultimate goal. So the first part is catch it. So the good news is that theft is in the data. So using exception reports to identify suspicious transactions. You then want to customize those exception reports based on brand, POS, and proven methods to uncover theft. So I'm going to give you just a quick overview of exception reports. In a later webinar, we'll go into a deeper dive on how you can leverage exception reports to find theft in your restaurant. So in this case, we have the exception reports here. We're going to click down into a store, and then we have these two examples. We're going to click on an example in the report. You can see it is a return in the drive-through and no customers present. So you have your manager doing a refund in the drive-through, cash refund, all by himself. Remember I talked about those refunds with no customer present? This is exactly why you guys want to make sure that that is not happening in your store. So he's going to ring in that refund right there. He's going to pull the cash out, counting it all out. Can we also talk about him not being in uniform too? In this case, he's going to take the cash to the office. So we're going to switch cameras and go over to the office real quick. Second thing, here's that opportunity. He's going to go into an office where he is all alone, and he's going to shut the door. And it even looks like he might have locked that door for a little extra privacy. So now he's done the refund with no customer present. He has the cash in his hand. He's alone in the office, so he's got his opportunity. And then what is he going to do with that cash? He's thinking about it. He is going to pull out his wallet, look at the cash that's already in his wallet, whether that got there legitimately or he had already stole it earlier, and he's going to add the cash that he just took from the POS system into his wallet. This is how you guys can catch theft in the data. You catch it and then you stop it. Stopping theft sends a message that this sort of activity will not be tolerated in your stores. So now you've caught it. Next thing you want to do is stop it. So if you change the policies that are being abused and leading to theft, you can stop theft from happening. Some of the policies and some of the recommended policies and procedures that we have are the following. So keys. Keys should always be kept in the office. You guys saw the picture earlier of the keys dangling out of the drawer. They should be kept in the office. They should only be used by a manager. No sales. No sales is huge. We find so much theft in no sales. No sales should always require a manager to be performed, and the receipt should be signed and they should be kept in the daily log. Another way that you can prevent it is tills. Tills should only be used by one person. The only exception to that would be when a manager rings in a refund, but they should always use a swipe card or biometrics. That way you can help ensure that only one cashier is working on the till and you have a record of which managers did refunds on it. So speaking of refunds, refunds should only be done at the front counter and always, always, always have a customer present. Refunds without a customer present is one of the easiest ways for managers to steal. We just showed you a video of that happening. Also, unless it's a partial refund, there should always be a matching receipt done earlier in the day or possibly the day before, but I wouldn't want to stretch it much farther than that. The customer and the manager on duty should always sign the refund, and again, that should be kept in a log. And refunds need to be done in the same currency as the original transaction. Depending on your POS, employees are able to refund to their own credit card. We've seen it done time and time again. They pay down their credit card, just doing a refund on it, swiping it right at that POS. So you also want to restrict the reopening of closed checks when possible, and voids or deletes after total should be performed by the manager and require a swipe card or a biometric. Lastly, you want to have a clear discount policy. Dollar caps tend to be more adhered to than the general one meal policy, because what is one meal to one person is different than what it is to another person. In fact, many POS systems allow you to put a maximum amount in for your employee discounts. If you're able to do that, I highly recommend it. Also, be sure your POS does not allow for multiple types of discounts to be allowed. We have seen where employees will bring in their 50% discount and then they'll add in an AARP discount or a police discount or even a BOGO discount to bring that cost even down more. And then lastly, employees and managers should not be allowed to ring in their own meals. This is the #1 way that you can help prevent discount abuse at your stores. And prevent it. So motivate your employees and make it a place that they want to work. You know, and video doesn't have to be just for finding theft. You can also use video to catch your employees doing good things. In fact, you can use Envision's watch video to catch them. You can even pull it up on your mobile and you can watch it live, you can watch it recorded, and then you can see when your employees are adhering to your policies and when they're going above and beyond. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or again, you can email them to info@envision.com. Thank you. Alrighty, so like I said, if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and put it in the chat now and we'll get to those. Also, if you don't want to put them in the chat, you can hit the raise your hand button and we can unmute you and you can ask those questions live. I see a couple questions. Will the deck be made available? Yeah, Cara already answered that. We will make this deck available. We will also have the recording, I believe, on our website.
Jen, if you don't have any live questions, we do have a few questions that were submitted with registration that we could jump to.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
All right. So first, somebody had asked, when somebody starts stealing from a company, do they generally steal the same amount each day or week?
You know, that's kind of a yes and no sort of answer. They don't typically steal the same amount, but what they like to do is they like to use the same amount to void it, or maybe amount to ring in. Since most underringings aren't typical, so you know, if you go to a store and you pay for 20 and they put 20 in and then the register tells them how much change is needed for that. Since when they're stealing, they don't have that functionality, they like to use the same amounts over and over and over again, so it's easy math in their head. So often they'll void out the same amount, or they'll apply the exact same discount, or maybe they'll ring in the same small dollar amount, like 25 cents. They can do the math easily then on their head. So that's one of the things that we look for in the loss prevention department. We're really looking for those patterns. We'll look for the patterns both in the positive amounts and in the negative amounts.
Awesome. It looks like Denise asked a question in the chat. She said, just a comment, the reason for theft has a lot of commonalities with why employees decide to malinger on workers' compensation claims. So, good comment, Denise. Do you have any?
Yeah, it's true. I think a lot of times we forget about, I mean, loss prevention is not only finding theft, but it's stopping the theft in the first place. You really want to try to prevent that theft because it's really hard to get those dollars back. Once they steal it, it's, you know, you could fire them, you could go after them, but it's just really tough to get that money. So you want to stop it in the first place. And like I talked about in the presentation, it has way more effects than just the $20 maybe that they stole from their refund, or the amount that whatever they rung in at the time. It's just, it really snowballs and kind of changes the culture of your store.
Thanks, Jen. Chris also added, never forget that if a cashier is always over instead of short, it usually is a sign of theft. They are overcompensating to stay under the radar.
That is a really, really good point. A lot of times they think that when they will catch theft because when they count out the drawers will be short, but it's not, it's actually over. And sometimes they do that on purpose so that they do kind of stay under the radar so they don't get in trouble. Other times they don't want to steal the coins. They'll just usually, as you saw in the video, he just took the cash. They don't want to put the coins in their wallet, so those coins kind of add up. Also, they may miscount the amount of money that they're going to steal, and so that can leave in there. They may forget to take it out, so that'll leave to those drawers being over. We've also heard from a lot of our clients that some of the people that are stealing are some of their best employees, and that's because they do want to hide under that radar, and they don't want the managers really looking at them.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Another question that was submitted with registration. How is Envision able to verify anomalies in the data?
So what we do is we have the exception reports, and we customize those exception reports in the loss prevention department based on brand, and then based on the POS system, and then based on how we have seen that they are stealing at that particular brand. Because how they steal at Taco Bell is different than how they steal at a Krispy Kreme, which is different than how they steal at like a sit-down restaurant like Denny's. So we then customize those reports down based on the brand, the POS, and how we have found it. And then once we get customized down, we're going to look for patterns like I talked about. We're looking for the most egregious, although the most egregious isn't always a sign of theft. Really, these people like to fly under the radar. So it's very rare for them to ring in $100 refund, for example, and steal $100. I mean, we find it, and don't get us wrong, that's really nice, because then you have, boom, you got a big one. But normally they're doing those little refunds, or they're doing the little underringings, or they're doing a little bit to really fly under that radar. So we're going to look for those patterns. We're going to look for the most egregious, and we're going to just kind of work our way down until we find something or a person or a store where we see some anomalies going on, and we see what's going on in the video does not match what's listed on the receipt, for example.
All right, I have one more question that was submitted with registration.
Okay.
Where does the Envision team find most of their theft? Is it at the front counter, the drive-through, food going home at night, etc.?
Oh, that's a great question. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, this actually hasn't changed that much. So pre-COVID, we found most of our theft in the drive-through when you talk about the registers versus drive-through versus front counter. And the reason for that is you're kind of a little bit in a bubble. You know, people don't want to go in and help the drive-through person because they're working, and if you go in there, you're going to have to help them too. So the drive-through can be in there, and they can kind of control everything themselves. They're doing the register, they're making their own drinks, you know, they're handing the food out, they're collecting the cash. At the front counter, they're a little bit more visual. They're seen by the customer more. Other employees might be walking back and forth. So we tend, when it comes to the two POS systems, we tend to find it more in the drive-through. Post-COVID, that actually hasn't changed at all because we most business now is in the drive-through. So we still see it most in the drive-through. The second place that we see it most is in the office, like I showed in that video. They like to be in there by themselves. So if you have a policy that is not being enforced where the manager can count out the drawer alone, they are taking advantage of that. That is when even if the employee can count their own drawer out. If they can go in that office, either if they shut the door or don't shut the door, it really hasn't made a difference. That's another place that we see a lot.
So Kim had asked, could we speak to drive-through gap, cars without transactions, and how that plays into theft? Great.
Sure. So a drive-through gap and a car without transaction. So a car without transaction is a car that comes up to the drive-through and there's no transaction matching that time on the pad. Just about every fast food place has a timer on the pad, and so they can recognize when a car comes in. So if you have a car on the pad and you don't have a transaction that matches it, that's gold for us. Those are high percentages of theft because it's pretty rare for a car to come up to a drive-through and not actually have a transaction. Sure, sometimes they come up because they forgot a straw, something was missing from their order, or maybe they just wanted to talk to their buddies. Another reason why we see cars on the pad without a transaction is they're doing what we call speed of service manipulation. And that's when they're trying to bring their timer down. Maybe your guys are running a contest. Maybe they've gotten in trouble for the timer being too long. So they'll send a buddy to actually drive around. So we'll see the same car going around and around and around. But those we can, if we get cars without transactions, if we get it in the POS data, that's one of the first things we look at because it is very, very high hit rate of theft in those.
Does anybody else have any questions? We don't have anything else lined up to ask, so
okay.
Turning over to you, Jen.
Oh, you're welcome, Denise. Thanks for coming. I love, like I talked about earlier, my background has always been in law enforcement or I worked at Department of Homeland Security. So fighting theft and crime has always been a passion of mine. With the Envision system, with the data that we get, the exception report, it's almost like a game. It's in the data, so it's a matter of finding it. It's a matter of customizing those reports down to find it. And the employees are smart. They work on that POS system constantly, so they know all the different little tips, tricks, and stuff. So we play the game of catching them. We play the game of finding where they are. And yes, transactions without drinks is a great, again, back in that drive-through or front counter, either one. That could be front counter as well. Drinks aren't very expensive, so a lot of people don't think that there's a chance of theft there. But you think about how many transactions go through your drive-through in an hour. And then the majority of those, they get a drink. And if you think about how that the drive-through person doesn't ring in that drink, but they accept the cash for that $2 drink over and over and over and over again, that really does add up. And it's a great, great way to run to go underneath their radar. So with the exception reports, is you really want to look at a transaction that does not include a drink. So sometimes theft is in the data, and sometimes theft is the absence of data. So it's the lack of. So if you have a person in the drive-through and they're working in the drive-through during the lunch rush for 2 hours and you don't notice a cash transaction in those 2 hours, something's probably going on in there. It's that absence of data. So the same with without the drinks being a point of theft. Yeah, that's perfect. It's that absence of drink and a good majority of transactions. I think that might be it. So I just want to thank everybody for coming today and listening to my little spiel. Oh wait, we got another one. Oh, card skimmers in the drive-thru. Yeah. So if you guys have, this is something that's actually kind of scary. So when you hand your card over to the person in the drive-thru, they could skim it into a little card skimmer, and they're small. They're only about this big. So they can very quickly skim it into their palm, and the person in the drive-thru won't even see it. They could also take a picture of that credit card too. So that's why having cameras, that's not something that the data will ever pick up. That's why having cameras in wherever you're accepting credit cards is so, so, so important, because the only way you're going to catch that is on camera, or obviously if a customer sees it. That's not something that will ever, unfortunately, be caught in the data. All right, again, thanks so much, everybody, for coming today and for listening to us. I think we will get this posted on the website for future reference. If you guys can't sleep at night and you want to be put to bed, you can go ahead and watch it. And if not, again, thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody for taking the time.